Welcome to Family Betrayal Revenge. Stay tuned. Have a fun time and let's talk in the comment. Let's go!
I'm Rebecca, 34. 2 months ago, I woke up in a hospital bed, punctured lung, 3 broken ribs, to discover my newborn was being cared for by a stranger.
Why?
My mother chose blackjack over her granddaughter. For 9 years, I'd secretly sent them $4,500 monthly. Then my grandfather walked in carrying a folder that changed everything. If you're interested in this topic, hit the like button, subscribe, and type "interested" in the comments. And I will give you a heart. Before I tell you what was in that folder, if you've ever felt like the family ATM, the one everyone calls when they need something but conveniently forgets when you're bleeding out in an emergency room, stay with me because this story is about to get wild. And if you enjoy stories about standing up for yourself and karma doing its job, just give this video a quick like. It helps more than you know. Now, let me take you back 9 years to the day I made the first transfer that started this nightmare. I was 25, fresh out of college with my business degree still smelling like printer ink. My first real paycheck had just hit my account, and I remember staring at that number like it was a miracle, $3,200 after taxes, more money than I'd ever had at one time. I was sitting in my tiny studio apartment, the one with the radiator that clanked all night and the neighbor who practiced trumpet at 6 in the morning, planning how I'd finally buy a real bed frame instead of sleeping on a mattress on the floor. And then my phone rang. Rebecca. My mother's voice came through cracked and wet. She was crying, full-on sobbing, the kind that makes your chest hurt just listening to it. "It's your father. He had a stroke." My heart dropped into my stomach. The room spun.
What? When?
"Is he okay? Where is he?" The words tumbled out faster than I could think them. "He's stable now, but, honey, we don't have good insurance. The medical bills are already piling up, and we're 3 months behind on the mortgage. The bank is talking about foreclosure. They're going to take the house, Rebecca. The house you grew up in." I gripped the phone so tight my knuckles went white. "How much do you need?" There was a pause, a calculated pause that I didn't recognize then, but I see so clearly now. "I hate asking you this," she said, her voice dropping to that wounded whisper she'd perfected. "You just started working. You have your whole life ahead of you. But Rebecca, you're the only one who can save this family. Your sister is still in school. Your father can't work. I'm the only one standing between us and the street." The guilt hit me like a freight train. "How much, Mom?" $2,000 a month. That's what we agreed on. $2,000. More than half my take-home pay. I did the math in my head while she waited on the line. I could do it if I was careful, if I gave up the bed frame and the gym membership I just signed up for and kept eating ramen and maybe picked up some freelance work on weekends. What kind of daughter would I be if I said no? What kind of person lets their parents lose their home? I set up the automatic transfer that same night, sitting at my laptop with my hands shaking. "One more thing," Mom said before hanging up, and her voice changed, got firmer, more controlled. "Don't tell your father. He'd be so ashamed if he knew you were supporting us. This has to stay between us. Just you and me." I agreed. Of course I agreed. What daughter wouldn't protect her father's pride? She never said thank you. Not that first night. Not ever. Instead, she said, "This is what daughters do, Rebecca. This is what family means." And I believed her. 3 days later, I was scrolling through Instagram during my lunch break, eating a turkey sandwich I'd made at home to save money, when I saw it. My sister Jennifer had posted a new photo. She was standing in front of a boutique mirror holding up a Louis Vuitton bag, the never full in that signature monogram, grinning at the camera like she'd just won the lottery. The caption read, "Best mom ever." She knew I needed some retail therapy after my breakup. Heart emoji. Shopping bag emoji. Sparkle emoji. I stared at that photo for a long time. That bag cost at least $1,500. I knew because I'd looked at it myself once in a store window before laughing at the price and walking away. My mother, the same woman who'd been sobbing about medical bills and foreclosure 3 days ago, had just bought my sister a designer bag for retail therapy. I almost called her. My finger hovered over her contact. I wanted to ask, I needed to understand, but then that voice in my head started talking, the voice that had been trained for 25 years to make excuses. Maybe the bag was on sale. Maybe it was a gift from someone else, and Mom just helped pick it out. Maybe Jennifer really was hurting from her breakup and needed something to lift her spirits. Maybe I was being selfish for even questioning it. Maybe I was jealous. Maybe I was a bad sister for keeping score. That was the first lie I told myself, and it went down easier than I expected. It wouldn't be the last. Year 3. The amount climbed to $3,500. I remember the phone call. Rebecca, honey, I need to talk to you about something. Mom's voice was excited this time, not crying, not desperate, just enthusiastic, like she was sharing good news. Jennifer has finally found her passion. She wants to take this online marketing course to become a social media influencer. It's $500 a month for the program, but this is it, Rebecca. This is her calling. She's so talented with cameras and editing. And you know how hard it's been for her to find direction. I thought about my own student loans, the ones I was paying off at $400 a month, working overtime and weekends. I thought about how I'd found my own direction without anyone funding special courses. But I also thought about Jennifer, my baby sister, 7 years younger, still trying to figure out her life. If this was her passion, who was I to stand in the way? Plus, Dad's medications are getting more expensive, Mom added, her voice dipping back into that weary tone. The new heart medication alone is $800 a month, even with insurance. I know it's a lot to ask, but you're doing so well at your job. You got that promotion last year. You can handle this.
Can't you?
I adjusted my budget, cut my grocery spending even more, canceled my Netflix subscription, started taking on freelance consulting work every weekend, sitting at my laptop until 2 in the morning writing marketing proposals for small businesses, drinking gas station coffee because even Starbucks was too expensive now. Year 5, the number hit $4,500. The house needs major repairs, Mom explained. The roof is leaking. The furnace is on its last legs. And your father's health isn't getting better. You know how expensive his medications are. We've tried to manage, but we can't keep up. I never questioned it. I just moved money around like a financial Tetris game. Daniel and I had been dating for 2 years by then. He was an engineer, steady and practical, the kind of man who balanced his checkbook and actually read the terms and conditions. He noticed things I tried to hide. Rebecca, when are we going to talk about buying a place together? He asked one evening while we were making dinner in my still tiny apartment. Soon, I said, stirring pasta and not meeting his eyes. I just need to save a little more. We've been saying that for a year. His voice was gentle but persistent. I make good money. You make good money. We should be able to afford a down payment by now. Soon, I repeated, and I changed the subject to something about his project at work. But one Thanksgiving after we visited my parents, after we'd driven the 3 hours back to the city, Daniel asked me something that stuck like a splinter under my skin. Have you noticed your mom never asks how you're doing? I laughed it off, kept my eyes on the road. She's just busy.
She asks.
She spent 40 minutes telling everyone about Jennifer's Instagram followers and her sponsored posts. She didn't mention your promotion once. The promotion I'd worked 70-hour weeks to earn. I didn't have an answer for that. What I did have was a memory, one I'd pushed down and tried to forget. For years earlier, my grandfather had called me out of the blue. Grandpa Harold, Mom's father, the retired judge with the silver hair and the voice that could command a courtroom. Mom always said he was too busy to see us, that he'd gotten distant after Grandma died, that he didn't really care about family anymore, that he'd basically written us off. But that day, his voice was different, soft and careful, like he was approaching a wounded animal. Rebecca, I need to ask you something. There was a weight to his words. Are you happy? I was confused.
Yes, Grandpa.
I'm fine. And your mother, is she good to you? Is she treating you well? The question felt strange, loaded with meaning I couldn't decode. Yes, Grandpa. Everything's fine. Why are you asking? He was quiet for so long I thought the call had dropped. Then, if that ever changes, if things ever get hard, you call me. Promise me you'll call. I promise, I said, but I was already dismissing it, already categorizing it as an old man being paranoid. Then I hung up and forgot about it, pushed it into the same mental drawer where I kept all the uncomfortable questions I didn't want to answer. I shouldn't have forgotten. I should have called him right then. But I didn't, and that silence cost me years. The pregnancy changed everything in ways I couldn't have predicted. I was 33 when I saw those 2 pink lines on the test. Daniel and I were in our bathroom, both of us staring at the stick like it was going to transform into something else.
He cried.
I cried. We held each other, and for the first time in years, maybe the first time since I'd made that first transfer, I felt something shift inside me, something crack open. I started doing math I'd been avoiding for almost a decade. $4,500 a month times 12 months times 9 years. The number that came up made me physically sick. $486,000. $486,000. I could have bought a house, a real house with a yard and a nursery. I could have started a college fund that would have paid for 4 years at any university. I could have taken vacations that weren't just long weekends driving to the nearest state park. I could have retired 5 years early. But I pushed that thought away, like I'd been pushing away uncomfortable thoughts for years. What mattered now was the baby. What mattered was being a good mother. Better than I stopped that thought before it finished. I called Mom to share the news. I have something wonderful to tell you. I'm pregnant. Oh, Rebecca. Finally. Her voice was bright and loud. I was starting to worry you'd never give me grandchildren. Jennifer's been talking about having kids, and I thought she might beat you to it. I let that comment slide even though it stung. I had something harder to say, something I'd been rehearsing for days. Mom, I need to talk about the monthly transfers. With the baby coming, Daniel and I need to save for medical expenses and baby supplies and maybe a bigger place. I was thinking maybe I could reduce the amount to $3,000 for a while, just until we get settled with the baby. Silence. 10 seconds.
20.
I could hear her breathing, but she said nothing. Mom, after everything we've sacrificed for you. Her voice had gone cold, that ice water tone that made my stomach clench. After everything we've done, this is how you repay us? Do you know what medications your father takes? Do you have any idea what they cost? I just thought you thought about yourself. That's what you thought about. You thought about what's convenient for you, without considering that your father could die without his medications. You thought about your comfort while we're drowning. But Mom, the baby, our needs don't matter anymore? Is that what you're saying? Your father, and I don't matter now that you're starting your own family? I didn't reduce the amount. I couldn't. The guilt was too heavy. Before she hung up, I heard Dad's voice in the background, quiet and tired, almost resigned. Linda, maybe we should let her stay out of this, Robert. Her voice was sharp. This doesn't concern you. The line went dead. It was such a small moment, just a few seconds of background conversation, but I couldn't stop thinking about it. Dad had tried to defend me. Dad had suggested they let me keep my money. And Mom had shut him down immediately. That night, I couldn't sleep. The baby was doing gymnastics in my belly, and my mind was doing gymnastics too, going in circles, questioning everything and questioning nothing all at once. I grabbed my phone and scrolled through Mom's Facebook, something I rarely did because it always made me feel worse. There she was just 3 days earlier at a spa with her friends, her face covered in a green mask, cucumber slices over her eyes, wine glass in hand. The caption read, "Self-care Sunday with my girls. Blessed to have this tribe." And then there was another post from 2 weeks before that, a picture of a new dining room set, that farmhouse style that was trending. The table alone probably cost $2,000. Caption: Finally upgraded our dining room. New beginnings. The same week she'd told me Dad's prescriptions were bleeding them dry and they couldn't afford groceries. I stared at those photos until my eyes burned and my vision went blurry. I scrolled further back. A girl's trip to Napa Valley. A new outdoor patio set. Jennifer's birthday dinner at a steakhouse I knew charged $60 per entree. Concert tickets. A weekend at a bed and breakfast. All of it posted publicly, all of it recent, all of it expensive. Daniel found me crying at 2 a.m., sitting on the bathroom floor with my phone in my hand and tears running down my face. Hey, what's wrong? He sat down next to me, his arms around me. Nothing, I said, and it was such an obvious lie that even I didn't believe it.
Hormones.
Another lie. They were getting easier to tell, sliding out smooth and practiced. But Daniel wasn't buying it anymore. 7 months pregnant, exhausted from growing a human and working 50-hour weeks and sending money I didn't have, Daniel sat me down one evening with his laptop. "I need you to look at something," he said, and his face was serious in a way that scared me. He'd made a spreadsheet. Of course he had. He was an engineer. He had columns and formulas and color coding. Every transfer I'd ever made was listed there, every single one, pulled from our joint account records. The dates, the amounts, the running total. I stared at the screen. Seeing it all laid out like that, organized and undeniable, made my chest tight. "Rebecca, this is $486,000. His voice was quiet, but each word landed like a stone. "That's 2 down payments on houses in nice neighborhoods. That's our daughter's entire college fund at a state university. That's 20 years of retirement savings. That's 10 years of family vacations. That's financial security." I started to defend it, but the words died in my throat. "But they needed it," I finally whispered.
Did they?
He turned the laptop toward me and pulled up Facebook on another window. "Your mom posted about a new living room set last month. $3,500 according to the store's website. Your sister just got back from Cabo, 5 days, all-inclusive resort. Your dad's medication somehow cost more than cancer treatment, but they're taking weekend trips to wine country." The evidence was right there, undeniable, documented. I had no answer. "I'm not telling you what to do," Daniel said, and he took my hand gently. "But I need you to ask yourself something. If you keep doing this, if you keep letting them take and take and take, what does our daughter learn? That her mother is an ATM? That family means giving until you have nothing left? That love is measured in bank transfers?" I wanted to argue. I wanted to say he didn't understand, that he came from a normal family where people didn't manipulate each other, where parents didn't use guilt like a weapon. But he did understand. That was the problem. He understood better than I did. "What if I stop?" I whispered. "What if I cut them off and they hate me?"
Then you'll know, he said simply.
"You'll finally know what you're worth to them, whether they love you or love your money. And honestly, Rebecca, I think you already know the answer. You're just not ready to accept it." I wasn't ready to find out. Not yet. I was 7 months pregnant and terrified and still clinging to the fantasy that my mother loved me, that this was all a misunderstanding, that if I just kept giving eventually she'd see my worth. But the universe has a funny way of forcing your hand, of putting you in situations where you can't hide anymore, where the truth comes out whether you're ready or not. 2 months later, I was lying in a hospital bed with 3 broken ribs and a punctured lung, my newborn baby girl in the NICU fighting for her life, and my mother's voice was echoing through my husband's phone speaker, cold and annoyed, and so revealing it shattered every illusion I'd been holding onto. "Rebecca always has these emergencies," she'd said. "Your sister never has these problems." And that's when I finally understood. Some lessons you learn the hard way. Some truths you have to face when you're at your lowest point, when you're broken and bleeding, and there's nowhere left to hide. But what happened next, what my grandfather said when he walked into that hospital room, what was in that folder he carried, that changed absolutely everything. And you need to hear what happened that night, October 17th, because it gets so much worse before it gets better. October 17th, Thursday, 9:47 p.m. I remember the exact time because I had just checked my phone to text Daniel that I was leaving the office. The screen said 9:47, and I remember thinking I should have left 2 hours ago, but there was this presentation that needed finishing, and I was the only one who could do it right, or at least that's what I told myself. That's what I always told myself when I worked late, when I pushed myself past exhaustion, when I ignored the fact that I was 36 weeks pregnant, and my back was screaming, and my feet were so swollen I could barely fit them into my shoes. I texted him, "Finally leaving, drive safe, love you," and then I gathered my things, my laptop bag, my purse, the stack of files I was bringing home to review over the weekend, because even pregnancy couldn't stop the workaholic machine I'd become. The rain was coming down hard when I stepped outside, the kind of downpour that turns everything into a blur, where headlights become halos and the world feels like it's melting. I remember thinking I should wait it out, maybe sit in the lobby for 20 minutes until it calmed down, but I was so tired, bone-deep exhausted, and I just wanted to be home, wanted to be in my bathtub with the water as hot as I could stand it, wanted to sleep for 12 hours straight. I got in my car, adjusted the seat back to accommodate my belly, turned on the wipers to the highest setting, and pulled out of the parking garage. The drive home was only 15 minutes on a normal night, maybe 20 in this weather. I was 3 miles from home, almost there, almost safe. The intersection at Maple and 5th, I can still see it perfectly in my mind, the traffic light hanging over the road, the streetlights making puddles glow, the way the rain sounded on my roof like 1,000 tiny drums. I had the green light. I remember that with absolute clarity because I always check, I'm a careful driver, maybe too careful. Daniel always jokes that I drive like someone's grandmother. Green means go. Green means safe. Green means you have the right of way and the world follows the rules, and everything will be okay. The pickup truck ran the red light. I didn't see it coming, didn't have time to react, didn't even have time to scream. 1 second I was thinking about that warm bath and sleep and whether we'd finish setting up the nursery. The next second, metal was screaming, glass was exploding, the world was spinning like I was inside a washing machine, and there was this sound, this horrible sound of my car being crushed like a soda can. I felt the impact in my bones, in my chest, in the place where my daughter was supposed to be safe and protected. My airbag deployed and hit me like a punch from a heavyweight boxer. Something cracked, multiple somethings. I heard them snap like dry branches, and then came the pain, white-hot and all-consuming, radiating from my chest with every breath. I couldn't breathe. Each inhale was fire and knives and drowning all at once. Through the shattered window, through the rain and the smoke and my own blood dripping down my face, I heard sirens. Far away at first, then closer, then right next to me, and there were voices, so many voices, all talking at once. Ma'am, can you hear me? Don't move. Don't try to move. We're going to get you out. Stay with us. Flashlights in my eyes, hands on my shoulders, someone cutting through my seatbelt with scissors that sounded too loud in my ringing ears. She's pregnant, someone said, a woman's voice, urgent and scared. How far along? Oh God, we need to move now, she's bleeding, there's so much blood. My hand found my belly, instinct overriding pain. Still there, still round, still the same shape it had been. But was she moving? I couldn't tell. I tried to focus, tried to feel for those familiar kicks and rolls, but everything hurt too much. My entire body was one giant nerve ending on fire. I tried to speak, tried to say save her first, take me apart if you have to, but save my baby, but no sound came out, just a wheeze and a gurgle because my lung had collapsed and was filling with blood, and I was drowning from the inside. The last thing I saw before everything went black was a paramedic's face, young. Couldn't have been more than 25, and he looked terrified, his eyes wide and his hands shaking as he pressed something against my chest. The last thing I thought was please, not her. Take me if you have to, but not her. I haven't even met her yet. I haven't told her I love her. I haven't held her. Please God, please not her. Then nothing. Just black and silence, and the sensation of falling into a void that had no bottom. I wouldn't wake up for 14 hours, and when I did, I'd learn exactly what my family was made of. Exactly what I was worth to the people who were supposed to love me unconditionally. Daniel was in Seattle when his phone rang. He told me later, weeks later when I could finally bear to hear it, how it happened, how his world ended in the space of a single phone call. He was in his hotel room at the Marriott, 7th floor, City View, reviewing code for a morning presentation he was supposed to give to a potential client. It was a big deal, potentially a $2 million contract, the kind of thing that could make his career. He was sitting at the desk with his laptop open, wearing his reading glasses, probably drinking the bad hotel coffee, going over slides and talking points. The caller ID said Denver General Hospital. His first thought was that it was a wrong number. His second thought was his mother. She was 68 and had high blood pressure. Maybe something had happened. His third thought was me. Mr. Reynolds, this is Dr. Okonkwo calling from Denver General. Your wife, Rebecca, has been in a serious accident. Daniel doesn't remember packing. Doesn't remember throwing his clothes into a suitcase or calling the front desk or running to the elevator. Just fragments, disconnected moments like a film with missing frames. Running through the hotel lobby. The doorman asking if he needed a cab. saying something about the airport. The Uber driver asking if everything was okay. Is she alive? He kept asking the doctor, kept repeating it like a mantra. Is the baby alive?
Please tell me they're alive.
Your wife is in surgery right now, Dr. Okonkwo said, and Daniel could hear other voices in the background, beeping machines, people calling out medical terms he didn't understand. We had to perform an emergency C-section. We had to deliver the baby early. She's in the NICU now. And Rebecca? Daniel's voice broke. And my wife? Punctured lung, 3 broken ribs, internal bleeding. She's critical but stable. We're doing everything we can. Daniel stood in the middle of SeaTac Airport and felt the ground disappear beneath his feet. The soonest flight he could get was 6 hours away. 6 hours. He couldn't get there for 6 hours. His wife was unconscious in surgery, cut open, broken, maybe dying. His newborn daughter was alone in the NICU, premature, fighting for her life, and he was 2,000 miles away, powerless, useless, standing in an airport holding a plane ticket that might as well have been a piece of paper for all the good it did him. He did the only thing he could think of. He called my mother. She lived 20 minutes from the hospital. 20 minutes. She could be there before the surgery ended. She could hold Emma, our daughter, his daughter, who he hadn't even met yet. She could be there when I woke up, could hold my hand, could tell me everything would be okay even if it was a lie. She could do what mothers are supposed to do, what family is supposed to do. The phone rang 4 times and Daniel counted each ring like a countdown. Hello. Mom's voice was cheerful, relaxed, the voice of someone having a good time. Linda, it's Daniel. Rebecca has been in an accident. She's in surgery right now. The baby, oh my God. A gasp, sharp and sudden. Genuine shock in her voice. Is she okay? Is Rebecca okay? I don't know, Daniel said, and he was crying now, standing in the middle of the airport with tears running down his face and people staring. I don't know. I need you to go to the hospital.
Please.
I can't get there for 6 hours. I need someone there. I need family there. A pause. Too long. Long enough that Daniel felt his stomach drop.
Tonight?
Her voice had changed, the concern evaporating like water on a hot pan. You need me to go tonight? Yes, tonight. Daniel's voice cracked, and he didn't care who heard him.
Now. Right now.
Please, Linda, I'm begging you. Your granddaughter is in the NICU alone. She was just born. She's premature. She's alone. Another pause, and in the background, Daniel heard something that made his blood turn to ice. Bells, electronic chimes, the unmistakable soundtrack of slot machines, that particular digital melody that only comes from one place. A casino. Daniel, you know Jennifer is on her Caribbean cruise this week.
What?
What does that have to do with anything? I promise to watch her cat. Whiskers gets anxious when he's alone. I have to check on him every few hours or he stops eating. Daniel laughed. He actually laughed out loud because surely this was a joke. Surely no one could be this cruel, this selfish, this monumentally awful. Linda, your daughter is in the ICU. Your granddaughter was just born 2 months premature. I'm asking you to drive 20 minutes. 20 minutes. Rebecca always has these emergencies. Her voice turned cold, annoyed, like he was asking her to do something unreasonable, like he was the one being difficult. Your sister never has these problems. Jennifer is so organized, so put together. She plans everything perfectly. Maybe if Rebecca wasn't always working late, always pushing herself, always trying to prove something. She was driving home from work, Linda. Daniel's voice was flat now, shock giving way to something else, something darker. A drunk driver ran a red light. This wasn't her fault. Well, I'm sure it's not as serious as it sounds. Mom's voice was dismissive, like she was talking about a stubbed toe or a mild headache. You know how hospitals exaggerate everything to cover themselves legally. They probably just want to keep her overnight for observation. Call me tomorrow, when things calm down, and we'll figure out visiting hours. The slot machines chimed again, louder now, and Daniel heard her laugh at something, heard other voices in the background, heard the clink of glasses. She wasn't even trying to hide it. She was at a casino, gambling, drinking, having fun with friends while her daughter was dying. "You're at a casino," Daniel said flatly. It wasn't a question. "I'm having a night out with friends." Her voice was defensive now, aggressive. "Is that a crime? Am I not allowed to have a life? Am I supposed to sit at home every night waiting for one of Rebecca's emergencies? Your daughter almost died tonight. And she didn't, did she?" The coldness in her voice was like a physical slap.
She'll be fine. She's always fine.
"Rebecca's strong. She can handle it." A sigh, heavy with inconvenience, with the burden of being asked to care. "Besides, Daniel, you married her. This is your responsibility now, not mine. I raised her for 18 years. I did my part. Now she's your problem." She hung up. Just like that. No goodbye, no I'll pray for her, no please keep me updated. Just a click and silence. Daniel stared at his phone for a long time, standing frozen in the middle of the airport while people flowed around him like water around a stone. Then he did something he'd never done before, something I didn't even know he'd thought of. He scrolled to a contact he'd saved months ago, just in case, a number I'd mentioned once years back when I was telling him about my family, about the grandfather I never saw, the one my mother said didn't care about us. Harold Green. He pressed call and waited. At 78 years old, my grandfather answered on the second ring. "Daniel?" His voice was alert, concerned. "It's late. What's wrong?" And Daniel told him everything. I woke up to fluorescent lights and a tube down my throat, the kind of plastic tube that makes you gag and panic because your body knows it's not supposed to be there, knows something is violating the natural order of things. Everything hurt. My chest felt like it had been crushed under a truck. My right arm was immobilized, heavy with a cast. My head throbbed with a pain that made my vision blur. Even my thoughts felt bruised, sluggish, like they were moving through mud. A nurse leaned over me, her face coming into focus slowly. She had kind eyes, the kind of eyes that have seen too much suffering and still managed to stay soft. "Mrs. Reynolds, you're in the ICU at Denver General. You've been in surgery. You were in a car accident. Try not to move.
Try to stay calm.
I know the tube is uncomfortable, but you need to keep it in for a little while longer." I couldn't speak with the tube, but my hand flew to my stomach, that instinctive gesture that every mother makes, reaching for the place where life should be. But there was nothing there. Flat. Empty. Just bandages and pain. Panic hit me like a wave, pure white-hot terror that made all the machines I was connected to start beeping frantically.
Where was she?
Where was my baby? Was she alive? Was she okay? Had I killed her by working late, by driving in the rain, by not waiting out the storm? The nurse understood immediately. She pressed her hand over mine, firm and reassuring. "Your daughter is alive," she said, and I started crying so hard the tube made me choke. "She's in the NICU. She's small, 3 pounds 4 ounces, but she's strong. She's breathing on her own. She's a fighter, Mrs. Reynolds. Just like her mother." They removed the tube an hour later, and it felt like they were pulling my entire esophagus out with it. My voice came out like sandpaper over concrete, rough and painful. "Where's my husband? He's on a flight from Seattle. Should land in about 2 hours. He's been calling every 20 minutes for updates. And my mother?" I don't know why I asked. Maybe habit. Maybe hope. The nurse hesitated, and that hesitation told me everything I needed to know, communicated more than words ever could. "No family has come yet, ma'am."
I'm sorry.
No one. My daughter had been born, and no one from my family had come. Not my mother who lived 20 minutes away. Not my father. Not my sister, who I'd supported for years. No one had come to meet my baby girl, to make sure I was alive, to sit in the waiting room and pray. I asked for my phone. They'd saved it from the wreckage, the screen cracked in a spiderweb pattern, but still functional, still working like a miracle. No missed calls from Mom. No texts. No voicemails. Nothing. But there was one notification from Instagram. A post from Jennifer timestamped 3 hours ago, which meant she'd posted it around the time I was in surgery, around the time they were cutting my daughter out of me to save her life. It was a selfie on a cruise ship deck, Jennifer holding a cocktail with a little umbrella, the ocean sunset behind her, her hair perfect, her smile wide. The caption read, "Living my best life. Caribbean vibes only. Sometimes you just need to disconnect and recharge. Blessed beyond measure." Heart emoji. Sun emoji. Wave emoji. I stared at that photo until the nurse gently took my phone from my hand. "Mrs. Reynolds, you need to rest. Your body has been through significant trauma." "No," I said, my voice stronger now, clearer. "I need to hire a night nurse. Someone to stay with my daughter in the NICU until my husband arrives. I need someone with her right now." They connected me with an agency that specialized in NICU care. 40 minutes later, a woman walked into my room wearing scrubs and carrying a bag. "Mrs. Reynolds, I'm Margaret. Everyone calls me Maggie. I'll be taking care of Emma tonight." She was mid-40s with gray streaking her dark hair, warm brown eyes that crinkled at the corners, competent hands that looked like they'd held 1,000 babies. She looked at my chart, reading through my information, and then she stopped. She looked up at me with an expression I couldn't read.
"Reynolds," she said slowly.
"Rebecca Reynolds."
"Yes."
And then she said something that made the room tilt. "Harold Green is your grandfather, isn't he?" I nodded, confused. "How did you know that?" "Because I was his court clerk for 15 years before I went into nursing. I know your family, Rebecca. I know it better than you think." She paused, studying my face like she was making a decision.
"He talks about you."
"All the time. He keeps your picture on his desk, the one from your college graduation.
"He's so proud of you."
My heart stuttered in my chest, and I couldn't tell if it was emotion or the medication or my broken ribs. "He talks about me? That you're brilliant. That you work too hard.
"That he worries about you."
That his biggest regret is not speaking up sooner."
She paused.
I never understood what he meant by that last part.
"I didn't either. Not yet."
But I was about to find out because 3 hours later, everything would explode, and the folder my grandfather carried into my hospital room would contain evidence that would destroy my mother's lies, that would reveal years of manipulation and theft and betrayal so deep it would take years to process. But you need to know what happened in those 3 hours, what I did lying alone in that hospital bed, what decision I made that would change everything. After Maggie left to check on Emma, to hold my daughter when I couldn't, to be the grandmother my own mother refused to be, I lay alone in that hospital bed staring at the ceiling tiles and counting them because focusing on something concrete kept me from screaming. My right arm was in a cast, useless and heavy. Every breath sent lightning bolts of pain shooting through my ribs where they'd cracked like eggshells. But my mind was sharp, sharper than it had been in years, like trauma had burned away all the fog and excuses and lies I'd been telling myself. I fumbled for my phone with my left hand, my movements clumsy and slow. The cracked screen made everything look fractured, broken into pieces, which felt appropriate somehow. I opened my banking app, the one I checked obsessively every month to make sure the transfers went through, to make sure I wasn't disappointing anyone, to make sure I was being a good daughter. The transaction history loaded slowly, line by line, each entry a little knife wound. 9 years of transfers, automatic, reliable, like clockwork, like a tithe to a church that never prayed for me. $4,500 every single month on the first, never late, never missed, even when it meant I couldn't pay my own bills on time, even when it meant I ate ramen for a week, even when it meant I worked myself to exhaustion. I scrolled back and back and back, watching the numbers blur together. January 2025, $4,500. December 2024, $4,500. November, October, September, all the way back through the years, through seasons and holidays and birthdays, an endless river of money flowing in one direction with nothing coming back. Not one thank you text in the records. Not one acknowledgement. Not even a receipt confirmation. Nothing but money flowing out into a void that was never satisfied, never grateful, never enough. My finger hovered over the settings button, and I could feel my heart pounding against my broken ribs, could feel something shifting inside me, some fundamental truth rising to the surface like air bubbles from a drowning person. Manage automatic transfers. The words glowed on my cracked screen. Mom's voice echoed in my head, that voice that had shaped my entire adult life, that voice that had convinced me I owed her everything. This is what daughters do, Rebecca. This is what family means. But what do mothers do? The question came from somewhere deep inside me, from a place I'd kept locked away for years. What do mothers do when their daughters are bleeding in emergency rooms? What do mothers do when their granddaughters are born fighting for life? They show up. That's what they do. They drop everything and they show up because love isn't about money or obligation or keeping score. Love is about presence. Love is about being there when it matters most. Unless they don't. Unless they never did. I tapped the screen. Cancel transfer. The app asked me, "Are you sure you want to cancel this automatic payment? This cannot be undone."
Yes.
My thumb moved without hesitation. Another tap. Cancel transfer. Are you sure?
Yes.
9 years, $486,000, gone in 3 taps, erased like it never existed, like I was deleting a shopping cart or unsubscribing from a mailing list. That's all it took to end it, 3 simple taps on a screen. I put the phone down on the hospital tray beside me, and for the first time in almost a decade, I felt something loosen in my chest, something that had nothing to do with broken ribs or punctured lungs. It was relief. Pure, simple, overwhelming relief. The weight I'd been carrying for 9 years lifted, and I could breathe easier even with my damaged lung. I should have done this years ago. I should have done it the first time I saw that Louis Vuitton bag on Instagram. I should have done it when the amount climbed to $3,500 to $4,500, when the excuses got thinner and the spending got more obvious. But we can't go back. We can only go forward. 3 hours later, my hospital room door opened, and I expected a nurse coming to check vitals or adjust medication or ask me to rate my pain on that stupid scale from 1 to 10 like there's any meaningful difference between an 8 and a 9 when everything hurts. But it wasn't a nurse.
It was my grandfather.
Harold Green stood in the doorway, and he looked exactly as I remembered from 4 years ago, tall even at 78, silver hair cropped short and precise, shoulders still broad from a lifetime of standing straight in courtrooms, and those eyes, those sharp blue eyes that had read thousands of faces for lies and truth, eyes that missed nothing. Rebecca. His voice broke on my name, cracked like old wood, and that break told me more than any words could. My girl. Oh, my girl. I burst into tears. Not the quiet, dignified crying I'd been doing since I woke up, but full-body sobs that made my ribs scream in agony, and I didn't care because he was here. He crossed the room in 3 long strides and took my hand, my good hand, the one without the cast, and his grip was warm and steady and solid, an anchor in the storm. "I'm here now," he said, and his other hand came up to smooth my hair back from my forehead like I was 5 years old again. "I'm here, and I'm not leaving." I couldn't speak. My throat was too tight, my chest too full of things I'd been holding back for years. For years. It had been 4 years since I'd seen him, for years since that phone call where he'd asked if I was happy and I'd lied and said yes. Mom always had an excuse why we couldn't visit. Grandpa's traveling for his foundation work. Grandpa's busy with his writing. Grandpa's not really into family gatherings anymore. He's getting old, and he prefers his privacy. We should respect that. I thought I choked on the words. Mom said you didn't want to see me. Said you'd moved on after Grandma died. Said family wasn't important to you anymore. His jaw tightened, and I saw something flash in his eyes, something hard and angry and sad all at once. "She told me the same thing about you," he said quietly. "Told me you were too busy with your career. Told me you'd made it clear you didn't have time for an old man. Told me you'd asked her to tell me to stop calling." We stared at each other, and years of manipulation suddenly became visible, like someone had turned on a light in a dark room, and we could finally see the walls that had been built between us, see the lies that had kept us apart. "Daniel called me tonight," Grandpa said, and his voice shifted into something more formal, more controlled.
He told me what happened.
What your mother said. Where she was. Shame flooded through me, hot and thick. "Grandpa, I'm so sorry. I should have known." He squeezed my hand firmly. "You don't apologize. You have nothing to apologize for. Do you understand me? Nothing. He reached into his coat, a long old coat that smelled like his cologne and old books and safety, and pulled out a folder. Thick manila, worn at the edges, stuffed full of papers. Rebecca, I need to tell you something, and I need you to listen carefully. I've known for a while now about the money. My stomach dropped. The heart monitor beside me started beeping faster.
What?
The transfers. Every month for 9 years. He opened the folder and I saw bank statements, my bank statements, printouts with highlighting and notes in his precise handwriting. I've been watching. I have my ways. A ghost of a smile. Old habits from the bench. I knew something was wrong, so I looked. I stared at the papers. Every transaction documented. Every transfer highlighted in yellow. 9 years of my financial life spread out like evidence in a trial.
How? Why didn't you say anything?
He was quiet for a long moment. When he spoke, his voice carried decades of regret, the weight of mistakes that can't be undone. Because I made the same mistake with your grandmother. I saw problems in our family, saw your mother's issues developing, her manipulation, her narcissism, and I stayed silent. I hoped they'd fix themselves. I thought if I just waited, if I just gave her time to mature, she'd grow out of it. He met my eyes and I saw pain there, old pain that had never healed. Your grandmother tried to tell me. She saw it clearly, saw what your mother was becoming. She wanted to intervene, wanted to set boundaries, wanted to get Linda into therapy. I told her to wait, to give it time, to not make waves. And then your grandmother died suddenly, a heart attack at 64, and I never got to tell her she was right. I never got to make it right. His hand tightened on mine. I thought foolishly that if I gave Linda enough rope she might choose to do better on her own, that a mother's love would eventually win out over her selfishness, that she'd wake up one day and realize what she was doing to you. His jaw tightened and his voice went hard. Instead, she used that rope to tie you down for 9 years. She failed. She failed as a mother. And I won't make the same mistake twice. Before I could answer, before I could process what he was telling me, there was a commotion in the hallway. Voices, raised and angry. My mother's voice cutting through everything else like a siren. Where is she? I need to see my daughter. You can't keep me from my daughter. And then my father's voice, quieter, pleading. Linda, please. Not like this. The door burst open, and there they both were, my parents, Robert and Linda Martinez, and the contrast between them was stark. Dad looked like he'd aged 10 years, his face gray and haggard, his shoulders slumped, his eyes red-rimmed from crying or not sleeping or both. But Mom looked like she was ready for a performance. Her makeup was perfect, her silk blouse was pristine, her hair was styled. I could smell her perfume from across the room, that expensive Chanel she saved for special occasions. I learned later what brought her. Around 2 a.m., Grandpa had called her directly from his car on the way to the hospital. His voice was ice, was judgment, was 40 years of judicial authority. Your daughter almost died tonight, Linda. Your granddaughter is in the NICU. And I know exactly where you were. I know about the casino. I know about the transfers. I know everything. That's when Mom realized this wasn't just about me anymore. This wasn't about a daughter she could manipulate or guilt or control. This was about Grandpa knowing the truth. This was about the inheritance, about money, about damage control. She hadn't come to see me. She'd come to manage the situation, to spin the story, to salvage what she could. She froze when she saw Grandpa already there, already holding my hand, already positioned as my defender. Dad, what are you doing here? Her voice was confused, trying to sound surprised, but I could hear the calculation underneath. Then she spotted my father, and something flickered across her face, confusion giving way to something sharper, something dangerous. Robert? Why would you? She was putting it together, realizing that Dad had called Grandpa, had betrayed her, had chosen a side that wasn't hers. She switched modes instantly, her face crumpling into concern, her voice breaking. Paige, baby, oh my baby. I came as soon as I heard. I've been so worried. She rushed to my bedside, reaching for me, and I pulled away instinctively. Linda. Grandpa's voice cut through the performance like a knife. You came to the hospital at 3 a.m. The accident happened at 9:47 p.m. That's over 5 hours. Where were you? Mom's hand, reaching for mine, stopped midair. She looked at me, at Grandpa, at Dad, calculating her next move. There was traffic I couldn't get away from. You were at the Desert Rose Casino, Dad said quietly, his voice barely above a whisper, but it landed in the room like a bomb. I tracked your phone, Linda. I have the location data. You were there until 2:30 a.m. Mom's face went pale, then red, then pale again. Then she smiled, and it was the most chilling thing I'd ever seen, that tight, dangerous smile I knew so well from childhood, the smile that meant someone was about to pay for crossing her. Robert, how dare you? Her voice was sharp enough to cut glass. How dare you invade my privacy? I was with friends. Am I not allowed to have friends? Am I not allowed to have a life? Quick question before we continue, and I need you to really think about this because what happens next is going to blow your mind. Have you ever had someone in your family who could spin any situation to make themselves the victim, who could take your pain and somehow make it about them, who could look you in the eye while you're bleeding and ask why you're making things difficult for them? Because that's exactly what happened next, and if you've lived through this, if you know what it's like to be gaslit by someone who's supposed to love you, drop a comment and tell me your story because you are not alone and you are not crazy, and what you experienced was real. While your daughter was in surgery, Grandpa's words were ice, were judgment, were final. While your granddaughter was in the NICU alone, while your son-in-law was on his knees in an airport begging you for help, you were feeding quarters into slot machines. Mom turned to me and her eyes were pleading now, desperate, and I could see her trying to find the angle, trying to find the words that would make this okay. Rebecca, honey, you have to understand, I didn't know how serious it was. Daniel exaggerates everything. You know how he is. He's always so dramatic about medical things. I thought you were fine. I thought, Mom. My voice came out steadier than I expected, harder, like something inside me had finally calcified into steel. Stop. She blinked, genuinely surprised. I never said no to her. In 34 years, I had never told my mother to stop. I heard what you told Daniel. I heard every word. Paige always has these emergencies. This is your responsibility. I know exactly what you said. I looked at her, really looked at her, saw past the performance and the tears and the manipulation to the person underneath, the person who had spent 9 years taking my money and telling everyone I was selfish, who had chosen gambling over her dying daughter, who was standing in my hospital room more worried about her inheritance than my survival. And something in me broke. Not broke like shattered. Broke like chains breaking, like locks opening, like prison doors swinging wide. Don't look at me for help, Mom. I won't save you this time. And then I told her about the transfers, about the $486,000, about every lie she'd told, every manipulation she'd used, every time she'd made me feel guilty for existing. And the look on her face when she realized she'd been caught, when she realized Grandpa knew everything, when she realized the money was gone, that look was worth every penny I'd ever sent her. The silence in that hospital room was suffocating, thick enough to choke on, and I watched Mom's face cycle through emotions like a slot machine spinning through symbols, confusion to fear to anger to calculation, trying to land on the right combination that would win her this game. Grandpa reached for the folder again, and this time he pulled out the entire stack of bank statements, held them up like a prosecutor presenting evidence to a jury, and his voice had that courtroom quality, that measured authority that made every word feel like it was being recorded for history. Linda, I want you to see something. Look at this. He spread the papers across my hospital bed, careful not to disturb my IVs, and there it was, my entire financial life laid bare. This is every transfer Rebecca has made to your account over the past 9 years. Every single one. Documented, highlighted, dated. $486,000. His voice was steady, judicial, delivering a verdict. Your daughter sent you nearly $500,000. She delayed buying a house, so you could have spa days. She worked weekends until she collapsed from exhaustion, so you could take girls' trips to Napa. She gave up her financial security, her future, her peace of mind. And for what? So you could buy your other daughter designer bags and pay for influencer courses that went nowhere. That's not, Mom stammered, her hand reaching out to touch the papers like they might burn her. That's not the whole story. You don't understand. We needed don't. Grandpa's voice sharpened like a blade, and Mom actually flinched. Don't you dare lie to me, Linda. Not here.
Not now.
Not after tonight. He pulled out another paper, this one I'd never seen before. You told me Rebecca was selfish. You stood in my living room last Christmas, ate my food, drank my wine, and told everyone at the dinner table that your daughter was too busy for family, too important for her own parents, that she'd forgotten where she came from. His hand was shaking slightly, the only sign of the rage he was controlling. You told the entire extended family that Rebecca never helped, that she'd abandoned you in your time of need, that she was cold and distant and ungrateful. I remember Aunt Sarah asking if she should reach out to Rebecca, and you said, Mom cut in, her voice desperate now. I was hurt. I was emotional. I didn't mean you meant every word. Grandpa set the paper down. Because while you were saying those things, while you were poisoning the family against her, she was sending you $54,000 a year. That's more than most people make. That's a full salary. And you took it and spent it and lied about it. Dad had been standing in the corner this whole time, watching. And he looked like a man waiting for execution, knowing it was coming, knowing he deserved it. And you, Robert. Grandpa turned to him, and I saw my father actually shrink, actually become smaller. You knew, didn't you? Dad's voice was barely audible. Yes, sir. And you said nothing. I was afraid. Dad's eyes met mine, and they were full of tears. I'm so sorry, Rebecca. I was a coward. I've been a coward for 30 years. Grandpa stared at him for a long moment, and I couldn't read his expression. At least you're honest about it now. That's more than I expected. Mom found her voice again, and this time it came out wrong. Too shrill, too desperate. This is ridiculous. She waved at the papers. That money, Rebecca offered it. We didn't force her. She wanted to help her family. Is that a crime? Should I have turned it down? Should I have refused my daughter's generosity? Generosity. Grandpa's voice was quiet now, and somehow that was more terrifying than when he was loud. Is that what you're calling it? Generosity. Not manipulation. Not guilt. Not lies about medical bills that went to casino nights. Not lies about foreclosure that went to furniture. Generosity. You needed, Mom started. What did we need, Linda? Dad's voice cut through, and everyone turned to look at him. He was crying openly now, tears running down his face unchecked. What exactly did we need? New cars? Spa treatments? Cruise ship vacations for Jennifer? Weekend trips? Designer bags? Mom spun toward him, fury replacing desperation. She jabbed a finger at him. You called him, you betrayed me, you told him about the money, after everything I've done for this family, after I held us together. What have you done, Linda? Dad's voice was getting stronger, years of suppressed truth finally breaking through. What exactly have you done? I held us together. I managed everything. I made the decisions. You managed to spend our daughter's money. Dad's hands were shaking and he clenched them into fists at his sides. You managed to lie to everyone. You managed to make her feel guilty for being alive. I watched Linda. I stayed quiet. I told myself it wasn't that bad, that you needed the money for real things, that maybe I was misunderstanding. But tonight, his voice cracked. Tonight when Daniel called, when he was begging you to go to the hospital, when our daughter was dying and our granddaughter was fighting for her life, you were at the blackjack table. I heard everything because you put him on speakerphone. You laughed about it afterward, Linda. You laughed. The room tilted and I felt dizzy even lying down. She laughed. Dad turned to me and his face was destroyed. She hung up on Daniel and she turned to her friends and she said, Paige will figure it out. She always does. She's dramatic, but she's tough. This will blow over by tomorrow. And then she ordered another drink and went back to playing cards. I couldn't breathe. Even knowing what I knew, even having heard the conversation myself, hearing it confirmed, hearing that she laughed, it was different, it was worse. I couldn't keep quiet anymore, Dad continued. I couldn't let it go. So I walked outside, and I called your grandfather. I told him everything. The money, the lies, the casino, the way she talks about you when you're not there, all of it. Mom stared at her husband like she'd never seen him before, like he'd transformed into a stranger. You're choosing her over me? After 32 years of marriage, you're choosing your daughter over your wife? I'm choosing what's right. Dad wiped his eyes with the back of his hand. For the first time in 30 years, I'm choosing what's right instead of what's easy. And it should have been 30 years ago. It should have been before any of this started. Grandpa placed a hand on Dad's shoulder, a silent acknowledgement, a gesture of respect from one man to another. Then he turned back to Mom, and his voice became formal, final, the voice of a judge delivering sentence. Linda, I'm meeting with my attorney tomorrow morning. I'm changing my will. The color drained from Mom's face like someone had opened a valve. Her mouth opened, but no sound came out. Everything that was meant for you will be divided between Rebecca and Robert. You'll receive a trust with conditions, therapy being the primary one, but the bulk of my estate will ensure that Rebecca and Emma are taken care of. That the people who actually value family, not just family money, are protected. Dad, you can't. Mom found her voice, and it was strangled, panicked. Please, you don't understand. Megan needs that money. She has nothing. She has no career, no savings. She needs. Megan is 29 years old and has never held a job for more than 3 months. Grandpa's voice was ice. That's not Megan's fault, Linda. That's yours. You gave her money instead of responsibility. You gave her comfort instead of character. You taught her that the world would provide without her having to work for it. That's not love. That's sabotage. But we're done here. Grandpa's voice was final, absolute. This conversation is over. Mom's composure, that careful mask she'd worn her entire life, shattered like glass. The performance was over. No one was buying it anymore. She turned to me, desperate now, reaching for me with both hands. Rebecca, please. Talk to him. Tell him we can work this out. Tell him families forgive. Tell him I'm your mother, and that has to count for something. I looked at her, and for the first time in my life, I saw her clearly, without the filter of obligation or guilt or desperate hope. This was the woman who taught me to ride a bike, who braided my hair before school pictures, who stayed up with me when I had nightmares, who told me I could be anything I wanted. This was also the woman who spent 9 years taking my money and calling me selfish, who chose slot machines over her dying daughter, who laughed when my husband begged for help, who made me feel guilty for having boundaries, who poisoned my family against me while living off my salary. Both things were true, and that was the hardest part, the part that made forgiveness feel impossible, because monsters are easy to hate, but mothers who are sometimes loving and sometimes monstrous, those are complicated. Those require you to hold 2 contradictory truths in your mind at the same time. Mom. My voice was calm, and I was surprised by how calm, how steady it sounded coming from my broken body. I can't help you this time. But I've helped you for 9 years, she said, and there it was, that transactional thinking that revealed everything. Like helping was currency, like love was debt, like family was a business arrangement where services rendered required services returned. I'm done, I said simply. The machines around my bed beeped and hummed and recorded my vitals, but I'd never felt more alive, more clear, more certain. She started crying. Real tears finally, her carefully applied mascara running down her face in black rivers, and I couldn't tell if they were tears of genuine grief or tears of a woman realizing she'd lost, that the game was over, that all her manipulations had finally caught up with her. Maybe there was no difference. Maybe she'd lied for so long she didn't know the difference between real emotion and performance anymore. Grandpa touched my hand, gentle, grounding. Rebecca, I don't know if you want anything from me. After all this time, after how I failed you by not speaking up sooner, by not protecting you, his voice wavered, but I want you to know that I see you. I've always seen you. I squeezed his hand as hard as I could with my limited strength.
I don't need money, Grandpa.
I know you don't.
But you'll have it anyway.
He smiled, the first real smile I'd seen from him in years. Because I just needed someone to show up. He nodded.
You have that now.
You'll always have that. Mom watched this exchange and something shifted in her face. The tears stopped midstream, and in that moment I saw it clearly, saw what Grandpa and Dad had been seeing for years. She wasn't sad about losing me. She was calculating her next move, already planning how to spin this, how to position herself as the victim, how to make this work for her somehow. For weeks passed, and my ribs started to heal, my lung reinflated. Emma grew stronger every day, hitting milestones the NICU doctors said might take months. My little fighter, my miracle baby. Life found a new rhythm that felt foreign and wonderful, quiet mornings with coffee that I actually had time to drink, Emma's small sounds filling our house instead of the constant anxiety that had lived in my chest for 9 years, Daniel working from home so he could be close, making me lunch, helping with feedings, being the partner I'd always needed but never fully appreciated. And my bank account, for the first time in nearly a decade, I watched it grow instead of drain, for $1,500 staying put every month. Money that was mine, that I'd earned, that I could use for my family, my real family. The first month without the transfer felt strange, like a phantom limb, like I kept expecting to feel that familiar drain, that familiar guilt, but there was nothing, just peace, just money accumulating like it was supposed to, like normal people's money did. Mom called, constantly. The voicemails piled up like snow. Rebecca, please, let's talk. Rebecca, I've been doing a lot of thinking, and I realize I made mistakes. Rebecca, you can't shut me out forever. I'm your mother. That has to mean something. I didn't answer. I wasn't ready. Maybe I'd never be ready. Then one afternoon, about 3 weeks in, the voicemail was different. Rebecca. Mom's voice was thick, wet, broken in a way I'd never heard before. I know I messed up. I know I hurt you in ways I can't take back. But please, please let me meet Emma. Let me be her grandmother. Let me prove I can do better. I'll go to therapy, like your grandfather wants. I'll do whatever it takes. Just give me one chance. Please, baby, just one chance. I played that message 3 times, each time trying to hear truth underneath the tears, trying to detect manipulation or sincerity, and I couldn't tell. Maybe because I didn't want to know. Maybe because hope is more dangerous than hatred. Daniel watched me from the kitchen doorway, coffee mug in hand. You're considering it. Am I stupid if I am? You're not stupid. He came and sat beside me on the couch, Emma asleep in her bassinet between us. You're hopeful. That's different. But Rebecca, he hesitated. You know what's going to happen, right? You know she's going to do exactly what she did before. I know, I said. So, why would you let her? Because I need to know once and for all. I need to see if there's any part of my mother left in there, or if she's completely gone. I need closure. He kissed my forehead. Then we do it your way, but we do it smart, we set boundaries, we stay alert, and the second she crosses a line, we're done. No second chances. I called her back. One chance, Mom. Emma's 1-month celebration party. You can come, but this is it. If you mess this up, if you use this opportunity to manipulate or scheme or do anything other than meet your granddaughter, we're done forever. Rebecca, thank you. She was crying. Thank you so much, I promise. I swear on everything, I'll be good, I'll behave. I just want to see her, just want to meet my grandbaby. The party was set for the following Saturday. 20 people, Grandpa, Dad who'd moved into an apartment because living with Mom had become impossible, a few close friends from work, Daniel's colleagues, and Mom. Daniel helped me prepare, hanging decorations, arranging food, creating a playlist of soft music that wouldn't overstimulate Emma. Are you sure about this? He asked the night before, holding up streamers. No, I said, honestly, but I need to know. He nodded because he understood that some lessons can only be learned by living them, that sometimes you have to give people enough rope to either pull themselves up or hang themselves with, and you have to be ready for either outcome. We both knew this wasn't really about second chances. It was about final confirmation. It was about closing a door that had been halfway open my entire life, and I wanted to be absolutely certain before I locked it forever. The party started at 2 p.m. and Grandpa arrived first, carrying a stuffed elephant bigger than Emma, grinning like he'd won the lottery.
She's going to love this, he said.
She can't even see clearly yet, Grandpa. Details, he said, setting it in the corner with the other gifts. When she can see, this will be waiting. Dad came alone, arriving at 2:15, and he looked better than he had in the hospital, still tired but cleaner somehow, like the weight of 30 years of lies was finally lifting. He brought a handmade photo album, empty pages waiting to be filled. For documenting her first year, he said quietly.
so she'll know her story.
Friends filtered in over the next 20 minutes. Colleagues from my marketing firm, Daniel's engineering team, the NICU nurse who'd saved Emma's life and who'd become a friend, and everyone cooed over Emma, who slept through most of it, blissfully unaware of her own celebration, her tiny chest rising and falling in the perfect rhythm of innocent life. Mom arrived at 2:45, 45 minutes late, and she wasn't alone. Jennifer walked in beside her, my sister, the influencer with 4,000 followers and no real job, and my stomach dropped because I hadn't even considered inviting Jennifer. This was already a test, and Mom had already failed by bringing an uninvited guest. Surprise, Mom beamed, that too bright smile that made my skin crawl. Jennifer flew back early from her trip, just to meet her niece. Isn't that wonderful? Jennifer smiled, that Instagram smile, the one she'd perfected for selfies and sponsored posts. Hey sis, congrats on the baby. She's precious. I forced a smile back. Thanks for coming. Daniel's hand found mine, his fingers squeezing a warning, a support, a reminder that we were doing this together. Mom made the rounds, hugging people, exclaiming over the decorations, playing the doting grandmother role she'd practiced her entire life. And to anyone watching, she was perfect, gracious, loving, exactly what a grandmother should be. But I watched her eyes. I watched how they kept glancing at Grandpa every few minutes, tracking his movements, checking his location like a predator tracking prey, calculating distances and opportunities. I wasn't the only one who noticed. Your mother's up to something, Daniel murmured into my ear. I know. Just watch. 30 minutes into the party, I slipped into the kitchen to refill the ice bucket, and I heard voices from around the corner, whispered but urgent, and I froze. Jennifer was on her phone, and I could hear Mom's voice through the speaker even from 10 feet away. Mom, you need to talk to him soon. Jennifer's whisper was harsh. I can't keep living like this. The influencer thing isn't working without funding. I need that inheritance money. I know, honey. Mom's voice came through tinny, but clear. I'm working on it. Just give me an opening with your grandfather. I'll handle it. You promised you'd fix this. And I will. Trust me. Just stay close and look supportive. We need him to see us as a united front. I stepped back silently, my heart pounding so hard I thought it might burst through my healing ribs. So this was it. The apology, the tears, the promise to do better. All of it was just another manipulation, another scheme, another performance designed to get what she wanted. I walked back to the living room, calm, focused, clear in a way I'd never been before. Daniel saw my face and understood immediately. What happened? Watch, I said. Just watch. And then I saw it. Mom had cornered Grandpa near the window where the karaoke machine someone had brought sat on a side table, its wireless microphone resting there with a little red light blinking, still on, still active, still broadcasting through the speaker system someone had set up earlier. And Mom had no idea because she was too focused on Grandpa, too focused on her pitch, too focused on winning to notice the technical details that would destroy her. Dad, I know things have been tense. Her voice was soft, pleading, and it was being amplified through every speaker in the house. But you have to understand, Megan needs help more than Rebecca does. Rebecca has Daniel, she has a career, she has everything. Megan has nothing. And whose fault is that the audience needed to hear this? The room went silent, and I mean the kind of silence where you can hear people's breath catch, where 20 pairs of eyes turned simultaneously toward the window where Mom stood with Grandpa, completely oblivious to the fact that her voice was being broadcast through every speaker in my living room, amplified and clear and undeniable. I'm not asking you to cut Rebecca out completely, Mom continued, her hand on Grandpa's arm in that gentle pleading gesture she'd perfected over decades. Just reconsider the split. Make it more equitable. Megan deserves the same opportunities Rebecca had. It's only fair.
Fair.
That word hung in the air, like poison gas. Someone coughed, a sharp sound that cut through the silence, and Mom turned, confused at first, and then her eyes landed on the karaoke microphone sitting on the side table 3 feet from where she was standing, its little red light blinking cheerfully, recording and broadcasting every manipulative word. The color left her face like someone had pulled a drain plug. She looked at the microphone, at the speakers positioned around the room, at the 20 faces staring at her with varying degrees of shock and disgust and understanding, at me standing across the room watching her with a calm I didn't know I possessed. She started. That's not. You're taking this out of context. What context would make that better, Linda? My colleague Sarah stepped forward, her arms crossed, her voice sharp as broken glass. Did I just hear correctly? You're lobbying for inheritance money at your granddaughter's celebration party? While your daughter is still recovering from almost dying. You don't understand our family dynamics, Mom said, trying to regain control, trying to spin this somehow. You don't know the whole situation. I understand plenty. Sarah's voice was steel, and I loved her for it in that moment. Rebecca is one of the most generous people I know. She works harder than anyone in our office. She never complains. She never asks for help. And you're here, at her baby's party, playing politics over money that isn't even yours, yet while she still got stitches from emergency surgery? Mom's mouth opened and closed like a fish drowning in air. No words came out because there were no words that could fix this, no explanation that could make this okay, no performance that would work anymore because everyone had heard the truth in her own voice. Grandpa stepped away from her, physically distancing himself, and his face was stone, was granite, was the face of a judge who'd just heard a confession. Everyone in this room just heard what I've known for years. His voice carried, clear and final. My daughter sees her children as resources to exploit, not people to love. She sees family as a business opportunity, not a bond to cherish. She came here today not to meet her granddaughter, not to repair her relationship with Rebecca, but to manipulate an old man into giving her money she hasn't earned and doesn't deserve. The room held its breath, and I could feel the collective shock, the way everyone was processing this revelation, this public unmasking of someone they'd thought they knew. Mom's face cycled through emotions again, shock to embarrassment to anger to desperation, landing finally on fury because when cornered, when exposed, predators don't apologize, they attack. You. She spun toward Dad, who'd been standing near the doorway. You set this up. You told her to keep the microphone on. You planned this whole thing to humiliate me. I didn't, Dad started, but Mom wasn't listening. This is all your fault. Everything is your fault. If you'd just supported me, if you'd just stood by me instead of running to my father like a coward. I stood up, and my voice cut through her tirade like a knife, through silk.
Mom.
One word.
Calm.
Final. She turned to me, and for a moment I saw fear in her eyes, real fear. The fear of someone who's finally losing a game they thought they'd rigged in their favor. Paige, please, this is a misunderstanding. I was just trying to stop. I walked to the center of the room, and everyone was watching me now, my friends, my colleagues, my family, and I could feel their attention like a physical weight, but it didn't crush me. It held me up. It gave me strength. I gave you one last chance today, I said, and my voice didn't waver. Not because I thought you'd changed. Not because I believed your apology, but because I needed to know for sure. I needed to see if there was any part of my mother left in there, or if you'd become completely consumed by greed and manipulation. Mom reached for me, her hand outstretched. Rebecca, honey. For 9 years, I continued talking over her. I sent you $4,500 every single month. Do you know what that adds up to? Do you have any idea? Gasps around the room. Someone whispered, "Oh my God. $486,000. I let that number sit in the air, let it sink into everyone's consciousness. $500,000. While I was sending that money, while I was working 70-hour weeks and skipping meals and giving up every dream I had, you were telling everyone I was selfish. You told my grandfather I was too busy for family. You told my aunts and uncles I never helped. You told anyone who would listen that I was cold and distant and ungrateful." I paused, and I could feel tears on my face, but my voice stayed steady. The night I almost died, the night your granddaughter was born 2 months premature and fighting for her life, you were at a casino. Your granddaughter was alone in the NICU. My husband was on his knees in an airport begging you to drive 20 minutes to the hospital. And you chose slot machines. You chose blackjack. You chose your friends and your fun over your own daughter's life. Mom was crying now, real tears streaming down her face, her mascara running in black rivers, and she looked old suddenly, all her careful grooming and styling unable to hide the ugliness underneath. And today, I continued at my daughter's party at what was supposed to be a celebration of life and family and love. You brought my sister, who I didn't invite, you showed up late, and you spent your time trying to manipulate my grandfather into changing his will. You didn't come here to meet Emma. You didn't come here to apologize. You came here to protect your access to money. The room was absolutely silent. Even Emma had stopped making her little baby. Sounds like she understood the gravity of the moment. I'm not doing this out of anger, Mom. My voice softened but stayed firm. I'm doing this out of love. Love for my daughter, love for myself, and honestly, even love for you, because someone should have stopped you a long time ago. Someone should have set boundaries and said no and forced you to face the consequences of your actions. I took a breath and it hurt my still healing ribs, but I didn't care. From today forward, we're done. Don't call. Don't text. Don't send letters. Don't show up at my house. Don't try to contact Emma. We're done. Mom's face crumpled completely. Rebecca, please, you can't mean that. I'm your mother. You can't just cut me off. Families don't do that. Families forgive. Families show up, I said simply. That's what families do. They show up when it matters. And you didn't. The silence after my words was broken by Mom's raw, ugly crying. The kind of crying that comes from realizing you've lost something you can never get back. She looked around the room, searching for allies, for someone to defend her, for anyone to say I was being too harsh, too cruel, too unforgiving. No one spoke. Not one person. Then Mom exploded, and it was like watching a dam break, all that carefully controlled manipulation giving way to pure rage. You ungrateful child. Her voice was shrill, cracking. After everything I sacrificed for you, I raised you. I fed you. I gave you everything. I clothed you. I put a roof over your head. I gave up my dreams for you. You took everything, Mom. There's a difference. You took my money. You took my peace. You took years of my life. You took my sense of security. You took my relationship with my family. You poisoned everyone against me while living off my salary. Megan stepped forward, and I'd almost forgotten she was there. She'd been so quiet, watching everything unfold. Everyone's overreacting. Her voice was defensive, entitled. You don't know the whole story. Mom was just trying to secure our future. She was looking out for us. Save it, Megan. Sarah folded her arms. We all just heard your mother ask her dying father to cut her other daughter out of his will at a baby's party. What part of that story are we missing exactly? Megan's mouth snapped shut, and I saw something flicker across her face. Maybe shame, maybe fear, maybe the first crack in the entitled facade Mom had built around her for 29 years. A man near the door, James from Daniel's engineering team, spoke up. Wait, let me make sure I understand this correctly. She sent them $500,000 over 9 years, and they called her selfish? That's what I heard, someone else murmured. That's insane, another voice added. The whispers spread like fire through dry grass, and I watched Mom realize that this wasn't just about losing me anymore. This was about her reputation, about what these people would say when they left, about how this story would spread through social circles and family networks and professional communities. This was public exposure, and there was no coming back from it. Dad stepped forward, his hands shaking but his voice firm. Linda, we need to go. Robert, we can't just leave. We need to fix this. We need to. Yes, we can. He put a hand on her arm, gentle but insistent. We've done enough damage here. It's time to go. For a moment, I thought Mom would fight, would make a bigger scene, would scream and cry and refuse to leave until someone physically removed her. Instead, something in her collapsed like a building with its supports cut. The fight went out of her all at once, and she looked small suddenly, diminished, a woman who'd spent so much energy on manipulation that she had nothing left when the masks came off. She turned without another word and walked toward the door, her heels clicking on my hardwood floor, each step sounding like a countdown. Megan followed, shooting me a look of pure venom, pure hatred, the look of someone who'd just watched their meal ticket disappear. Just before Mom reached the door, she paused, her hand on the knob, and I thought maybe she'd turn around. Maybe she'd say something genuine. Maybe there'd be one moment of real emotion, of real regret. "You'll regret this, Rebecca." Her voice was cold, was final. "Someday you'll need me, and I won't be there. You'll realize what you gave up." I met her eyes, and I felt nothing but calm.
No, Mom.
"I spent 9 years thinking I needed you. Turns out I was wrong." The door closed behind them with a quiet click, and the room exhaled collectively. For a long moment, nobody moved, nobody spoke, and then Sarah came over and hugged me carefully, mindful of my healing ribs. "You did the right thing."
I know.
"But it still hurts." Saying it out loud made it real, made it true. "It will hurt for a while." She pulled back and looked at me. "But you'll heal. And you'll be free." The party continued, quieter now, more subdued, people speaking in hushed tones and occasionally glancing at me with expressions of sympathy and respect and understanding. Grandpa sat in the rocking chair holding Emma, his eyes closed, his lips moving in what might have been prayer or might have been words to his great-granddaughter, promises he'd never broken, like the promises his daughter had shattered. 2 weeks after the party, Grandpa called me. It's done. He'd met with his attorney, Marcus Wu, the same man who'd handled Grandma's estate decades ago. The new will was signed, witnessed, notarized, and filed with the appropriate authorities. The breakdown was clear and final. 70% to me, held in trust for Emma with provisions that she'd receive portions at 18, 25, and 30, designed to provide support without creating dependency. 20% to Dad because he'd finally found his voice, finally chosen right over easy, finally become the father I'd needed him to be years ago. 10% to Mom and Megan with one ironclad condition attached like a lock on a door. Mom had to complete 6 months of therapy with a licensed therapist specializing in narcissistic personality disorder, had to provide documentation of attendance and participation, had to have the therapist submit quarterly reports confirming she was engaging genuinely with the process. Only after those 6 months would she receive a single cent, and even then it would come in small monthly installments designed to last, not to spend. "I don't expect her to do it," Grandpa said, and I could hear the sadness in his voice. The grief of a father who'd lost his daughter, not to death, but to something worse, to greed, to manipulation, to the complete absence of self-awareness. "But the door is open if she chooses to walk through it. That's all I can offer." "It's more than fair," I said. "It's more than she deserves." "Maybe, but it's what I can live with." There was a pause. "Rebecca, I'm sorry I didn't do this sooner. Sorry I didn't protect you. Sorry I believed her lies about you. You were trying to respect her autonomy," I said. "You were hoping she'd choose to be better." "That's not a character flaw, Grandpa. That's hope. And hope isn't weakness." The ripple effects came quickly like dominoes falling in patterns I couldn't have predicted. Without my monthly transfers, Mom and Dad's finances collapsed almost immediately. The spa trip stopped. The casino nights ended. The weekend getaways disappeared. Mom had to sell the new living room set she'd bragged about, the one that cost $3,500, got maybe $800 for it used. The designer bags went to consignment shops. The jewelry got pawned. Megan's influencer career imploded without the funding that had kept it artificially alive. Her follower count had been propped up by giveaways and sponsored posts that Mom had been paying for, and when the money stopped, the followers disappeared like smoke. She posted a tearful video about family betrayal that got exactly 47 views before she deleted it out of shame. A week later, she got a job at Nordstrom, retail sales, her first real job at 29 years old, and I heard through Dad that she cried in the stockroom on her first day because her feet hurt from standing. Dad called me about a month after the party, his voice quiet and careful. "I know I don't deserve forgiveness," he said. "You're right," I replied. "You don't." Silence on the line. "But thank you," I continued, "for finally speaking up. For finally choosing the truth." "It was too late," his voice broke. "But it wasn't nothing." "No," he said, and I could hear him crying. "It wasn't nothing." I let him cry. Sometimes that's all you can do. Bear witness to someone else's pain and recognize that forgiveness and understanding are different things, that you can understand why someone failed without absolving them of the failure. The extended family heard everything, of course, because news like that travels at the speed of gossip. Aunts and uncles who'd believed Mom's stories for years, who'd thought I was selfish and cold and too busy for family, reached out with awkward apologies. Some I accepted. Some I didn't. Not out of spite, but out of self-preservation, because I'd learned the hard way that not everyone who says sorry deserves access to your life. That apologies without changed behavior are just words, just sounds people make to feel better about themselves. And my bank account, my beautiful growing bank account, for the first time in nearly a decade, I watched it accumulate instead of drain. $54,000 a year that used to disappear like water through a sieve was now mine to use as I saw fit. We paid off our mortgage early, Daniel and I standing in the bank while they processed the final payment, both of us grinning like idiots because we owned our house, really owned it, no more debt hanging over our heads. We started Emma's college fund, real money growing with compound interest, ensuring she'd never have to work 3 jobs to pay for her education like I did. We took a vacation, our first real vacation in years, to a cabin in the mountains where the only sound was whined through pine trees and Emma's soft breathing in the bassinet beside our bed. 3 months later, Emma was sleeping peacefully in her crib and Grandpa was in the rocking chair beside her reading a John Grisham novel with his reading glasses perched on his nose. Daniel was in the kitchen making his famous Sunday morning pancakes, the smell of vanilla and butter filling the house. This was my life now, this quiet domestic peace that I'd fought so hard to achieve. Grandpa came over every Sunday without fail. His Sundays were sacred time dedicated to his great-granddaughter. He was teaching Emma to recognize his voice even though she was too young to understand, speaking to her in that gentle way people use with babies, telling her stories about her great-grandmother, about the woman who'd seen through Mom's manipulation 50 years ago and had tried to stop it. She would have loved you, he told Emma, his fingers stroking her tiny hand. She would have spoiled you absolutely rotten. She would have been the grandmother you deserved. I watched them together from the doorway and felt something heal inside me, some wound I didn't even know I was carrying, the wound of never having had a grandparent who showed up, who cared, who made me feel like I mattered. Emma would have that. She'd have Grandpa, and she'd know unconditional love that didn't come with price tags or conditions or silent scorecards. Dad called sometimes, and we talked carefully, navigating a relationship that was new and fragile like glass that had been broken and glued back together, never quite the same but functional in a different way. He'd moved into a 1-bedroom apartment, still married to Mom technically but living separately, trying to figure out who he was without her influence. "I'm proud of you, Rebecca," he told me one evening, his voice thick with emotion. "I should have said it years ago, but I'm saying it now. I'm so proud of the woman you've become despite everything, despite us." I didn't know how much I needed to hear that until he said it, and then I was crying, sitting on my couch with my phone pressed to my ear and tears running down my face because every daughter wants to hear her father say he's proud of her, even daughters who've learned to live without it. 6 months after the party, my phone buzzed with an unknown number, and I almost didn't answer, had trained myself not to answer unknown numbers, because Mom had tried calling from different phones, from friends' phones, from blocked numbers. But something made me pick up. "Rebecca." Megan's voice was small, stripped of that entitled tone, that Instagram influencer effect, just raw and real, and almost unrecognizable. I said nothing. Let her work for it. Let her prove this was real. "I know I don't deserve this call," she continued. "I know you probably hate me. I know I've been awful. But I needed to say something, and if you hang up, I'll understand."
"Still nothing for me."
"I got a job," she said. "A real one. I've been there for 4 months now. It's nothing fancy, just retail at Nordstrom, but I show up every day. I do the work. I'm learning what it means to earn things instead of having them handed to me." She paused, and I could hear her breathing, ragged and nervous. "And I started therapy. Dr. Sharon Winters. She's helping me see things about Mom, about me, about how I was raised to believe I was special, and everyone owed me something, about how toxic that belief system was." Her voice cracked. "I'm not asking for money. I'm not asking for forgiveness. I'm not even asking for a relationship right now. I just wanted you to know that I'm trying. For the first time in my life, I'm actually trying to be a decent person. The silence stretched between us, long enough that I could hear her breathing getting faster, more panicked, thinking I was going to hang up without saying anything.
Why now?
I finally asked,
Why are you doing this now?
because Dr. Winters asked me a question I couldn't answer, Megan said. She asked me, when you're old and you look back on your life, who do you want to be? What do you want people to say about you at your funeral? And I didn't have an answer, Rebecca. I realized I was 29 years old, and I had no identity outside of being Mom's favorite, no accomplishments I'd earned myself, no relationships that weren't transactional. Her breath hitched. I don't want to be Mom. I don't want to end up 60 years old and alone, wondering why no one loves me, blaming everyone else for my problems. I don't want to look at my life and realize I've never actually done anything real. I let her words sit in the air between us, processing them, trying to detect manipulation or performance, trying to hear truth underneath the emotion. This could be another con, another play in a long game, but something in her voice felt different, broken in a way that's hard to fake, vulnerable in a way Megan had never been. I'm not ready to let you back in, I said finally. My voice was firm but not cruel. I understand. But I heard you, and I appreciate you taking the time to call and tell me. Good luck with therapy. Good luck with the job. 1 week later, I sent her a text message, 2 words, just 2 words that felt like cracking open a door that had been sealed shut. Good luck. It wasn't forgiveness, but it wasn't a closed door either. It was acknowledgement, recognition that people can change if they choose to, if they do the work, if they face themselves honestly. Mom never called again, and I heard through Dad that she'd moved in with an old friend from high school, a woman named Patricia who'd apparently been enabling Mom's behavior for decades. The house had been sold because there were more debts than anyone knew, credit cards maxed out, loans taken against the equity, financial carnage hidden behind the facade of spa days and designer bags. No more casino nights, no more weekend trips, no more elaborate performances of wealth and happiness. She never completed the therapy requirement for the inheritance, and I don't think she ever even called to schedule an appointment because that would require admitting she needed help, admitting she'd done something wrong, admitting she'd spent 60 years manipulating everyone around her. I don't feel happy about Mom's situation, but I don't feel sad either. I feel free. Megan and I aren't close, and we may never be. The damage runs too deep. The years of being the unfavorite, the scapegoat, the one who was never quite good enough compared to her, those scars don't heal quickly. But she's still in therapy according to Dad, still working at Nordstrom, still trying. She sent Emma a birthday card on her first birthday, handmade not bought, with a simple message inside, "Happy birthday, Emma, love, Aunt Megan." It wasn't much, but it was real, and that counted for something. Dad comes to dinner once a month now, and he and Daniel talk about football and engineering, and Dad holds Emma with a tenderness I never saw when I was young, maybe making up for lost time, maybe trying to be for her what he wasn't for me. Last week, I was putting Emma to bed, her room dark except for the nightlight that projects stars on the ceiling, and she grabbed my finger with her tiny hand and looked at me with those big trusting eyes that haven't learned yet that the world can hurt you, that people can disappoint you, that family can betray you. I made her a promise, speaking softly, so only she could hear. I will never make you feel like you have to earn my love. You are enough exactly as you are. You will never have to prove your worth to me. You will never have to buy my affection. You are loved unconditionally, completely, without reservation or condition or secret scorecard. Family isn't blood. I've learned that the hard way. Family is who shows up, who stays, who chooses you not because they have to, but because they want to, not because you're useful, but because you're you. I finally found mine, and it was worth everything I lost to get here. Before we end, I want to share something with you because if you've stayed with me this whole time, if you've listened to this entire story, you deserve to hear the lessons I learned, not as advice because I don't know your situation, but as truths that help me survive. First, guilt is not the same as love, and for years I confused them. I thought feeling guilty about not helping meant I loved my family, but guilt is a tool people use to control you. Love doesn't keep score. Love doesn't make you feel small. Love doesn't require you to set yourself on fire to keep others warm. Second, you cannot pour from an empty cup, and I tried for 9 years. Tried to give and give and give until there was nothing left, until I was working myself to death to fund someone else's comfort while sacrificing my own future. That's not love. That's self-destruction disguised as devotion. Third, the people who matter will understand your boundaries, and when I finally drew a line, I was terrified everyone would abandon me. But the opposite happened. The people who truly loved me respected my decision. The people who didn't just showed me who they really were, and that was the gift, the clarity of knowing. And finally, choosing yourself is not selfish. It's survival. It's self-respect. It's teaching your children that their mother knows her own worth. Emma will grow up seeing a mom who doesn't apologize for existing, who doesn't beg for crumbs of affection, who really knows that she deserves better. Thank you for staying with me through this entire journey. It wasn't easy to tell, and I'm sure it wasn't easy to hear, especially if you've been through something similar. If any part of this story resonated with you, if you recognized your own family and mine, if you've ever felt like the family ATM or the scapegoat or the one who gives everything and gets nothing back, I want you to know you're not alone. You're not crazy. What you experienced was real, and you deserved better. Drop a comment below and tell me, have you ever had to cut off a family member? Have you ever chosen yourself over someone else's expectations? What would you have done differently in my situation? Because I genuinely want to know. I want this to be a conversation, not a monologue. And if you're new here, if this is your first time watching one of these stories, kindly join our community. Hit that subscribe button because we share stories like this regularly. Real stories about real people standing up for themselves, setting boundaries, and finding their way to freedom. There are more stories waiting for you. Stories about people who chose themselves, who survived their families, who built new lives from the ashes of the old ones. Check the description below for links to other videos you might find helpful. And remember, you deserve people who choose you back, not because of what you can give them, not because of what they can take from you, but just because of who you are. You're enough. You've always been enough, even when someone tried to convince you otherwise. Thank you for watching.